In this video, I'm going to be talking about spacing between players and player scaling with Easy Team Builder. Now, a lot of people ask the question, how do you adjust the spacing between the players? And that's because there's no adjustment that says player spacing. That is actually adjusted with player scaling. And the reason why is because this adjustment adjusts both things at once, because you really can't adjust scaling and spacing independently. I just got a few examples to show you from the builds I did, and it'll make a little more sense when we talk about this here. Now, this adjustment can be from 0 to 100, and that number really doesn't correlate to anything other than 50 is roughly shoulder to shoulder apart. So if I put it at 0, here's 0 and here's 100. That's the min and max adjustment. But if you look at this, there is, in this bottom row, there's 10 images, and it has to space those a certain amount to fit those in the template. And whether you're at 100 or you're at 0, the amount of space between the faces is going to be the same if you have the same number in the row. So with those 10 images, it's going to put those images a certain distance apart to fit those on the template. And so this is the extreme example here, but as you increase the scaling, you decrease the relative spacing between your images. So at 0, you see you've got a big gap between the images, and at 100, you've got quite a bit of overlap. So here's 0, and then here's 25. You see the images are getting closer together as they're getting bigger, even though the faces on the template are still the same distance apart. And then here's the default of 50. And then 75, you see as the images are getting bigger, they're getting more overlap. And then all the way up to 100. So just keep that in mind. If you want to increase the spacing between the images, you decrease the scaling number. Now with football players, since they have shoulder pads, you tend to sometimes get a little more overlap than you want with it at 50. I think a value of 45 with football players with shoulder pads is a good starting point. And usually with building teams, I think 45 for most football teams should work fine. Now, without shoulder pads, the standard default value of 50 typically puts high school level kids about shoulder to shoulder. Now, with younger kids, you might get a little more spacing with it at 50, so you might increase it up to, 60 or 65. But generally, I think maybe 35 up to 65 is generally the range. I left quite a bit of adjustment, more so than you'd probably ever need. I wouldn't think you'd usually want to go all the way down to 0 or all the way up to 100, but just know that you do have that full range in case you need it. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. Just remember that player spacing and scaling are adjusted together with the scaling. As the players get bigger, the spacing between the players gets less. Hope that makes sense, and thanks for watching.